Database triggers is one of those objects that's included in SQL Server that's a lot of power there for you. But what you're going to find out there in the real world anyway, is that database programmers fall into one of two categories when it comes to triggers. They either love these things and every problem that comes along is solved by using a trigger, or there are those that just never seem to getting around to using them, and usually I find that to be because they don't really understand what's going on with them. Now, trigger is not a horse. If you get that, you're getting kind of old. A trigger is a stored procedure that executes automatically. Now, this is real interesting, but we can create a trigger, and when we create the trigger, we designate it as an update trigger, an insert trigger, or a delete trigger. Or it can be an insert and an update, or an update and delete, or whatever. It can be any combination of the three. But the bottom line is, for example, if it's an insert trigger, then whenever the insert command is executed on that table, then this trigger is going to fire. And it is going to execute whatever code is in it automatically. And the code that's in a trigger is really just a stored procedure. So really what we're saying when we say trigger is, I'm going to create an insert trigger, and every time somebody tries to insert into this particular table, I want you to go to fire this particular stored procedure. Now, what would the stored procedure do? Well, let's say I'm adding a new customer. We want a trigger to fire to go check to make sure that this is not a customer that's already been in our database, that this is not a customer that qualifies for something else. Who knows what we're checking for, but we can do all kinds of things with triggers. Now, let me give you a visual of what this looks like. We have a table here, and we have an insert trigger that we have created. So whenever somebody does any kind of insert onto this table, it's going to kick off this trigger, it's going to run some code, and it might decide, no, we can't insert this person, and might delete that row that we just added right back out. So somebody sends an insert command. Notice I'm not showing you all the code on either of these, but somebody executes an insert command, and it writes some data into the table. Now, one of the things that a lot of database programmers and administrators don't like about triggers, they fire after the fact. They fire generally after the data goes in. We'll talk more about that later, but I don't want to confuse you right now. So the data goes into the table, and the table says, well, I got an insert trigger, and it fires that insert trigger. And so the insert trigger fires and takes whatever action is out there in the code on that table. It may go check some records somewhere else, remote database, and then come back, and based on what it finds there, either make an adjustment to this record, let the record stay, delete it, all sorts of things. So that's the bottom line on triggers. That's what they do. And a little bit later on in the course, we're going to dig into these quite a bit more. And I'm going to take you under the hood a little bit, show you how to create one of these things. And so we'll dive a little deeper later on. But for now, I just want to kind of get your head around what a trigger is.